In the 1970s, hard rock was ruled by giants, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and Black Sabbath. At the heart of it all stood a man both admired and feared. Ritchie Blackmore, the brilliant but volatile guitarist behind Deep Purple and Rainbow, was a true pioneer, crafting some of the heaviest, most influential riffs in rock history. His talent inspired generations of metal musicians, but his temper and brutally honest opinions made him one of the most unpredictable figures in rock. Blackmore was notorious for speaking his mind, even if it meant burning bridges. He didn't just dislike some bands, he loathed them. Over the years, Ritchie openly mocked artists in interviews, dismissed their success, and sometimes even refused to share a stage with them. Today, we're counting down the 7 bands Ritchie Blackmore reportedly despised the most. From accusations of stolen riffs to jealous rivalries and brutal insults, these feuds reveal just how fierce and uncompromising one of rock's greatest guitarists truly was. Let's dive in. 7. Led Zeppelin. We kick off at number 7 with one of the biggest names in rock, Led Zeppelin. You'd think Ritchie would have admired fellow British rock icons who shaped the sound of the 70s, but according to those who knew him, he absolutely couldn't stand them. Blackmore believed Led Zeppelin built their empire by stealing blues riffs from African-American musicians and taking the credit. He reportedly called them frauds who became millionaires off other people's work. His biggest irritation, though, was the constant comparison. Music journalists often placed Deep Purple side by side with Led Zeppelin, which Ritchie found insulting. He believed Purple were more original, technically superior, and far more disciplined musically. He frequently took shots at Jimmy Page, calling his guitar playing sloppy and over-reliant on studio tricks. Ritchie allegedly told friends that Page couldn't perform his own parts live without making mistakes. Crew members claimed that when both bands played the same festival, Ritchie would leave before Zeppelin even hit the stage, just to avoid seeing them perform. To him, Zeppelin's commercial fame represented everything wrong with mainstream rock, and their success only fueled his resentment. 6. Kiss at number 6. The face-painted American phenomenon, Kiss. They sold out arenas, moved millions of records, and became pop culture legends. But to Ritchie Blackmore, they were nothing more than a circus act. He reportedly called them a marketing gimmick masquerading as a band. In interviews, Ritchie trashed Kiss for prioritizing theatrics over musicianship, claiming their music was simplistic, repetitive, and soulless. Insiders say he became furious whenever their name came up. What really stung was that Kiss outsold Deep Purple in the U.S. during the 70s, something Ritchie couldn't comprehend. He saw them as talentless showmen who'd somehow outpaced real musicians. Tour promoters recalled him refusing to share a bill with Kiss or appear on TV shows where they were scheduled. He reportedly told organizers flat out, "If they're there, I'm not." For Ritchie, Kiss symbolized everything fake about the rock business. Flash over substance, style over skill. 5. The Rolling Stones, sliding into number 5. The one and only Rolling Stones. Revered worldwide as the greatest rock and roll band of all time. But in Ritchie's eyes, completely overrated. He reportedly said the Stones owed their fame more to attitude than ability. He criticized Mick Jagger's vocals as weak and Keith Richards' guitar work as primitive. In one interview, Ritchie mocked their formula, saying they'd been playing the same 3 chords for 50 years. He felt their reputation as living legends was undeserved and that their fame overshadowed more skilled musicians like himself. Insiders say he turned down invitations to tribute concerts celebrating the Stones and openly dismissed any praise directed their way. To Ritchie, their global worship wasn't admiration. It was proof that rock fans had lowered their standards.
Number 4. Van Halen. At number 4, we have Van Halen, the American powerhouse that redefined guitar playing in the late 70s. While the world hailed Eddie Van Halen as a revolutionary, Ritchie saw him as a flashy trickster. He dismissed Eddie's signature tapping technique as show-off nonsense, claiming it lacked melody and emotional depth. According to friends, Ritchie often said Eddie's fast run sounded impressive, but meant nothing musically. He even bragged that he could play those same parts easily, but chose not to, because they weren't real music. The truth was, Eddie represented a new generation, young, innovative, and adored by fans. Ritchie, a perfectionist from an older school, couldn't stand being eclipsed by this new wave of guitar heroes. Even after Eddie's passing, Ritchie stayed silent, refusing to join other musicians in honoring him. Those close to him say it wasn't out of malice, but pure stubborn pride.
3. Queen. At number 3, we hit Queen, the band that blended rock, opera, and drama like no one else. To most, Freddie Mercury was a genius. To Ritchie Blackmore, he was a showman pretending to be an artist. Ritchie couldn't stand Queen's over-the-top theatricality. He reportedly called their sound overproduced, pretentious noise, and dismissed their operatic approach as nonsense that had no place in real rock. He often targeted Freddie in interviews, criticizing his flamboyant performances and claiming he cared more about image than music. Those remarks were controversial and at times seen as personal attacks. Part of the bitterness came from competition. Both Queen and Deep Purple were huge in the UK, but when Queen's fame began to surpass Purple's, Ritchie's resentment deepened. Witnesses recall him storming out of award ceremonies when Queen won trophies, refusing even to clap. His dislike for them became so well known that journalists started baiting him with Queen-related questions, and he never held back.
2. Black Sabbath. At number 2, we have fellow heavy metal pioneers Black Sabbath. Despite helping define the same genre, Ritchie reportedly had zero respect for them. He called their riffs boring, repetitive, and slow, and once claimed Tony Iommi played the same 3 notes for an entire career. The rivalry went deeper than music. Critics often debated who really invented heavy metal, Sabbath or Deep Purple. Whenever Sabbath got the credit, Ritchie allegedly lost his temper. He frequently mocked Ozzy Osbourne's vocals, calling him a terrible singer carried by his band's image. Even decades later, when historians crowned Sabbath the founders of metal, Ritchie refused to acknowledge it. To the very end, he insisted Deep Purple were the true originators, and that Sabbath's fame was just clever branding.
Number 1. Deep Purple Mark II. And finally, number 1. The band Ritchie Blackmore reportedly hated more than any other was his own. That's right, Deep Purple Mark II, featuring Ian Gillan and Roger Glover. This lineup created masterpieces like Smoke on the Water and Highway Star, but behind the success was chaos. Ritchie and Ian Gillan's relationship was explosive, filled with arguments, jealousy, and backstage fights that often turned physical. Ritchie couldn't stand sharing the spotlight with Gillan, whose charisma and vocal power often stole the show. Touring became unbearable, with shouting matches breaking out over song choices, solos, and direction. Eventually, the tension tore Deep Purple apart. Gillan left, and though Ritchie won, the band's magic was gone. When they reunited years later, old wounds reopened. Ritchie refused to fully make peace, still carrying decades of bitterness. In the end, Ritchie's greatest enemy wasn't another band. It was himself. His ego and resentment tore apart the very group that made him a legend.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.